Hello, welcome back to another Azure Centric Podcast on our Azure Weekly Update Show. My name is Marcos Nogueira, and with me I have that beautiful guy on my right, Andrew Lowes. How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're a little bit of a road show this week, right? We're going to have
Yes, yes,
a few weeks
absolutely.
where one of us will be
On different scenario.
traveling.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we are experimenting in this case for everyone that listen to us right now. We are experimenting new scenarios, new backgrounds. Now, this is not one of those backgrounds that you see on Teams. This is a real background. I'm on vacations with my family. As you can see on the window here. Uh, yeah, kind of. I look like one of those guys at the airport. But yeah, and this is a different show. So it's not because we are on vacations that we stopping recording. And here we are. So above all of that, above all of the entertainment, we need to keep update with Azure, and that is something
Absolutely.
that we need to do it no matter what, right? So, but before
Absolutely.
going on, so the agenda for this, and we were a little bit problematic. I mean, it was a nice week on Azure, I have to say. A lot of updates, a lot of Azure database related updates, Postgres, SQL. That is not
Definitely.
our wheelhouse at this show. Again, the intention of the show is to bring my expertise from the field and Andrew's expertise on the field. So we are two architects that we are working with the infrastructure on Azure. So usually SQL and Postgres and everything related to database, it's not our daily job. We know,
Exactly.
but it's not that we want to bring to the show, at least
So
on
it's
this episode.
Yeah, and I was actually talking about something like that with one of my customers just this week. Was there's so many services in Azure that's why there's so many different types of Azure experts, right? So
Exactly.
we can't know it all. I think I describe it quite often actually as we know quite a lot about a lot of things in Azure, but there's no way that we will ever know everything, especially at the pace that it changes and updates, which is evidenced, I think, solely by the
By
weekly
this
show.
podcast, exactly. Absolutely,
So
you
it's
could
really
not be
cool.
more right.
And I think, as we were talking and getting ready, and although I was fighting a little bit with some Microsoft website cookies, Microsoft, I have some special words for you right now. But that aside, we were talking about how important it is for us to make sure that we do the updates for everybody on a regular basis because we have some freaking awesome listeners and followers on YouTube and Twitter and on iTunes, of all places, and everything for the podcast. So
Yeah,
thank you so much. I wanted to be the one to say thank you a little bit this week because I'm very grateful for all of the very special feedback and comments that everyone leaves. It's really, really awesome, and we really do appreciate all of your feedback. We love when you let us know tips that help us as well. So I think constructive feedback is good. Destructive feedback, whatever you want to leave, go
exactly.
for it.
Smash that like button. It's what we what I always said. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to support and show that love that we are every single episode that we are so blessed to have it. Right? It's really important for us knows that we are reaching, and our goal is at least to um, help someone on that week with that.
Just one person a week, we can
Apparently
help.
we
That's
are helping
fantastic.
a few more, which is awesome. It's really humble to do that. But yeah, so this week our, let's say, team it's for this show or for this episode is a mix of automation and monitoring. I have to say, we have a few other updates that they are related to other things like Defender, for example, related to SQL as well. But the majority of the updates is going to be related to automation, PowerShell,
Yep.
which we love, right, a lot, and about in this case the monitoring. So I think we should rolling this and starting the show. What do you think?
Absolutely.
So let's roll. So welcome back. And now let's jump into the first update. So the first update is the general availability of Azure Backup now supports SQL Server, uh, now supports archive tier for backups of SQL Server in Azure VMs. So this is a very important update, at least for me, that I think, because now you can retain your backups for lower duration on the way cost effective. We've been talking about
Exactly.
costs, costs on this show a lot of times, and this is one of the things that we want to start bringing. Is that now you have the archive tier that was missing, okay, for those backups for SQL Server on Azure VMs. This is not related to the Azure SQL backups, is
Yeah,
related
this is
to
not the PaaS or SaaS service. This
exactly
is
this is
SQL running on
an
your
Azure
VM.
VM. Yeah. So
Yeah,
like you have on premise, you have a VM that is running SQL inside, and now you are backing up, in this case, the SQL Server, because you have that possibility on an Azure VM. So besides the Azure VM, okay, that you are backing up the entire VM, now you can back up inside of that VM the SQL Server. And to be able to do that, now you have the archive tier enabled for you. So which represents a low cost archive tier for you to be able to do that integration approach and having longer backups, right?
yep, absolutely. And the nice thing here is that this has actually the general availability of this feature. So while it is still in preview in some regions, a lot of regions have been included in the general availability. So this is going to be really great for that long-term retention. It's going to help lower those storage costs. Really, when we talk about archive tier, it's the cold tier if we think of hot and cold tiers for storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to significantly, I feel it's going to significantly impact
Yeah,
storage cost, and it's going to be a very positive change, right?
absolutely.
So yeah, it's going to
One
let
of
us
one
keep
of the
more
things
backups.
that it is, but one of the things is, even if you enable now, you have a few days that you can be using this, because it's only be chargeable until it's not going to be charged until September 1st, right? And that
Exactly.
is good news, because you can experiment, because it's GA, so you can experiment this on your production environment without any costs associated having this tier.
That's
So
correct.
now,
And
so
the risk is low because it's long-term retention that we're talking about. This isn't
exactly,
yesterday's backup. This is 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, right?
or a month, or a quarterly,
Exactly.
whatever it is, right? So that is the good news about that, is that particular possibility of having the backups, right?
Exactly.
Moving on,
Exactly.
to the next one. And the next one is the software inventory and agentless dependency analyzes general availability. or with Azure Migrate. Oh my God,
You got
uh,
through it. It's
I
that's all
got
that
through it. I'm on
matters.
vacations. I apologize for that. So my brain still thinks that I'm
He's
on.
6 beers into the Azure review, folks. It's okay.
Yes, that's okay. So what is this? What do you think about this update?
So this is a really nice one, right? So this is going to enable the agentless software inventory collection for VMware VMs or virtual machines, right? So this is very, very helpful. So, if we think in terms of using remote access and we're trying to bridge different environments, the hybrid on premises, we're trying to have multi-cloud hybrid, right? So if we have VMs running in the AWS VMware stack, so this is going to allow us to look into those VMs now with no extra agent that has to be installed
Yes,
and
and
use
I
Azure
think
Migrate.
it's
It's
the
so
key.
huge, right?
It's the key because the dependency analysis that we have that is major on Azure Migrate. So for you that you are new at the channel or the podcast, or even if you already know this because we already mentioned this on the show, on other episodes, is fundamental to have the dependency agent installed because that
Yeah.
will give you a deeper analysis. That is what you want when you're trying to migrate your workload from on-premise to the cloud. So dependencies like where is that server is going to connect, which ports are you connecting, which protocols are you using, because that can define or not to group those on a different way to migrate that to Azure, right?
Yeah.
And
So
be
this one is
able,
really cool though, right?
yeah,
Because
because now you
this
don't
is,
need the agent anymore.
yeah, and it's agentless, but not only does it do installed software, it looks at roles and features for
Yeah,
Windows
absolutely.
and does dependency analysis. So if there's a special software package installed and it has other software dependencies, those are triggered and those are included in this analysis. But
Absolutely.
wait, folks, there's more. It's not just on Windows, it's
No,
also on
in
Linux
Linux. Yeah,
VMware VMs. So now we're really hitting a lot of the on-prem stacks that are, maybe hanging on. They're running large clusters. They've had not just hesitancy to migrate to cloud, but maybe they have some requirements like a medical or
yeah,
something where they have to stay on-prem. They're not able to go to cloud for compliance reasons.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
this allows us to use Azure as part of our DR planning. And though we can't move permanently to cloud, if we operate there for less than a week, as long as we're not breaking any rules, then we're able to incorporate Azure Migrate as part of our assessment
Yeah,
and part of our BCDR strategy. So this is really, really big.
it is.
Um, and again, this
For
week
me, there is two
sneaking in these
components
small
about
ones,
this.
right?
Yeah, for me, there is two components about this. One of them is Azure Migrate is free, is a free tool that you can
Mm-hmm.
access or you can assess, in this case, your environment to see with different types of reports that you can do it as you're having on running on premise or uh, on a performance base, so you can analyze what's going to be your, in this case, scenario or costs and running all of that on Azure, because that's what Azure Migrate allows you to do it. But although, and you know what I'm going with this, because we suffer this in a lot of projects we work together, is sometimes to deploy agents, okay, and especially on some workloads. First of all, um, we need a change request, and
Yeah.
usually those types of assessments that you're doing on the current environment, it realize that you need a change request, so you realize that you need to go and prepare and fill a lot of those processes. That is normal,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes time, and usually
Yeah.
these migrate this Azure Migrate, you can do it within probably a reasonable amount of time that you can do that analysis to doing that. And I always try to push it, in this case, the dependency agent, because of the information that give us that will, in this case, you spend a little bit more efficient time at the beginning, but you will save it, in this case, when you're migrating those workloads to Azure. And
Exactly.
always the agent is always one of the barriers. In a lot of projects that we work,
Hmm.
it's not possible to do the agents. They need to do a security analysis. They need to do whatever it is that they are doing. What type of information are we gathering? Where is that information be stored? And all of that. And it's not only that. Every agent that you put on the server, it consumes resources, no
That's
matter
correct.
which agent, no matter whatever a vendor is saying, it always consumes resources because it's another service that you are having on that server. And by
Yeah,
doing that, it can consume minimal, yes, like 0.01%, but that 0.01% is competing with your production workloads. So
exactly.
by not having this anymore, but not having that agent anymore being deployed, it makes our life easier. It makes our life easier on the way that we don't need it anymore. We can achieve exactly the same information that is crucial for the project, but it's way more efficient and way better even for the customer side because now we can do our job on analysis and say, Mr. Customer, here it is what we want to migrate, and these are the groups. Let me know what you think, and we can start talking. So way more efficient. We don't need uh, to spend more time on processing on other things and concentrate, especially for us, right? To concentrate more time on those tasks and be ready. So be more agile to migrate. And I
Exactly.
know that
And
I've been too deep on this, but I think it's really the point of
well,
getting this analysis.
I'm gonna counter your deep analysis with a very easy thing that we overlooked, to be honest with you. So I think one simple benefit that isn't as simple, and when you talked about change requests, it reminded me, aha, I should talk about that. So quite often in older servers that we're trying to migrate to Azure, we may be required to do a reboot when we install that agent.
Yes.
And that completely goes away with this because it is now agentless, right?
Yeah, and a
And
lot
I
of
think that
times, if there is a pending reboot already on the
exactly.
server,
Yeah,
this
so you end
this
up
this
with two,
agent,
sometimes three reboots,
yeah,
and gosh, you're installing those
yeah,
updates on the reboot, so it takes longer when you're doing it.
absolutely,
And your change window, I think more than once, and on more than one project that we've worked on, we run out of change window with a system just
yeah.
doing the reboot to get ready to do our change, and then it's gone, and we have to start over again.
And
So
it's not
it's
only that. I have another one that's why I like this conversation with you because we're starting to complement each other. I have another one for you that we already been running that even on those reboots, right, that you're talking about. It's a 24 by 7 workload that you
uh-huh.
need like every quarter that time to just having that outage for 2 or 3 days. And I'm thinking, for example, in a lot of my experience, for example, on those mining workloads that we've been doing, for
Uh-huh.
example, um, that they are running 24 by 7, and they have those 3 days every quarter. That is where they do the maintenance. Everything is pushed back for those 3 months, for example, and on manufacturing as well, that
Yep.
you are taking those systems down for 3 months to do the maintenance because they need 24 by 7 to be running. So now we don't need 3 months to just deploy an agent, right? Because now it's agentless, right?
Yeah, the
It's
waiting
that's
period on some of those client requirements can be frustrating, let's say.
Yes,
Why are
absolutely.
we not making progress? How is Azure Migrate going? It's not going anywhere
It's not
because we can't do anything till another 60 days from now.
exactly, exactly, absolutely, absolutely,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think we covered that one off. We should let's go to the next one.
absolutely. Following your awesome segue, Azure Defender for SQL is now in general availability on Azure SQL Virtual Machine Blade. So another cool, it's a security one. Okay, so Azure
It is.
Defender now is coming. It's now available, so it's a GA that you can work with SQL Server IS. So this
Yeah.
is nothing to do with PaaS. Okay, that now you can go and bring your Azure Defender for those virtual machines. Um,
Yep. Azure Defender for
experience
SQL. So it
Azure
does
Defender
the
for SQL.
injection analysis,
Those
query
is those
analysis, all
is
that good stuff that we want to have running there.
absolutely. So this is another way that I see that, and I see a lot of Defender coming along. Especially the Defender used to be the Defender is now what was the ATP, the Advanced Threat Protection. So now
Mhm.
includes all of that. So that deep analysis, all of that machine learning, Azure, the artificial intelligence regarding all of the security part. Now we're starting to spread to basically the entire infrastructure. So it's not
Yeah,
only on Office 365 that is awesome, right? And the endpoint device. So now you're starting to see the Defender coming from the Azure platform as well,
that's
which
correct.
is
Yeah.
awesome, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
it's really extending. And one of the things, and I think they could emphasize this a little bit more in some of these updates with Defender for IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS solutions, is that all of those sensors, all of that information comes back to Azure Security Center
Yeah,
as the central point. But Security Center has to be turned on in your Azure subscription,
yeah.
and you have to enable those resources to talk to each other
Yeah.
between Defender and Azure Security Center. And
But
I
it's
think
not
it's
only that, you
something.
need to enable the Security Center, but you need to also enable inside of Azure Security Center the Azure Defender.
That's correct. Yeah,
So and then it's like yes, and you need to upgrade if you were talking about can I run this on my free version of Azure Security Center? No, you can't. You
no,
need to upgrade your Azure Security Center to the standard so you are able to just have the Azure Defender enabled on those workloads. Uh,
that's
so
correct.
so I just want to because I this is fresh on my memory because this morning I was talking about that. That's why I just click me say, oops, I should mention this because yeah,
Yeah,
it's key.
it's something I think that I honestly I would like to see it added in some of these, just even as an honorable mention in the update articles,
Yeah,
because I think that sometimes we people, regular people, don't realize that we have to enable and configure those integrations. We have to turn things on to see these benefits, and it is a deep benefit, right? So
yeah,
the SQL protection is very good. It's very thorough. I'm actually working with a customer recently that has this enabled on the Azure Defender for SQL on some of their other types of instances, and it actually does alert to suspicious queries that run. So there's really good protections against lateral movement through the data tiers of your
yeah.
applications in your tenant, and that's a critical piece. It adds deep insight, and it's easy to turn on. I don't want to talk about it forever, but I mean it's so easy to turn on,
It is.
and they have to, I think we need to tell people about that because because they don't know. It sounds like it might be complicated,
No,
right? But
it's
it
not.
isn't. It's not complicated at all.
It's not complicated at all. And
Sorry.
it's not complicated the next update as well. So the general availability of Azure Monitor IT Service Management, the ITSM connector, it's now certified with ServiceNow Quebec version. So this is not, I just
Uh,
want to say that this is not the Quebec version only for Quebec of ServiceNow. This is the version that ServiceNow calls, that is the actual version, that by any reason that it's above our pay grade, they call it Quebec. Okay, so it's not only for Quebec. If you are in Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, or even in US or the entire world,
It is the software version
version.
of
Okay,
ServiceNow
yeah,
called
Quebec,
Quebec version.
Quebec.
It's like version 17.
It's
That's all it is really,
it's
right?
like Windows 11.
Right? I
Absolutely.
have questions, but we can't ask those on the air.
No,
So
you can't. But what about this update? The cool thing about this is now, and you're starting to see a lot of this, okay,
Mhm.
of this connector from in this particular way on the service now, right? Is bidirectional. So means that if you connect the Azure Monitor, that is your alerting system when you have all the logs and you have all of that information, depending on how you create those rules, you can automatically update or send that information to create an incident. In this case, on the ITSM. And now, by saying that, I just come to my mind my ITIL, all of my TIL foundations. So you open an incident on the ITSM, that in this case is ServiceNow, and
Mhm.
then when the incident in this case is being resolved, it can automatically close, or if you are assigning that incident on ServiceNow to another team, it will update that on Azure Monitor. So you are following everything that you're doing. So it's bidirectional. It means that they are connected to each other, and you are telling Azure Monitor that you can update the ServiceNow, and ServiceNow they can update the Azure Monitor. So which is
Exactly.
pretty cool. We already have this in this case with other tools on Azure, especially Sentinel, right?
Mhm.
That you can, when you do the investigation and you close the investigation, automatically close the incident. And depending on the automation that you have on ServiceNow, from that specifically, you can update the users, whatever it is that you have configured. We are not here to talk about ServiceNow, but this it's good to see that now they've been updating this to the ServiceNow Quebec version.
Exactly. Yeah, I could not have said that better myself. I think you really
Thank
did
you.
cover it all, honestly. It's a great update, and you're absolutely right. The bidirectional synchronization, say that three times fast, right?
Yeah.
Is really a positive thing, and we are starting to see it quite a lot more often. And the reason it's positive is because it allows those updates to happen automatically, right?
Yeah.
And like you were saying, I love that use case of you have an incident open in Azure Sentinel, you resolve it, you update the investigation notes. It can integrate back to ServiceNow, for example, here, and close the incident there in ServiceNow as well. And one of the reasons that that's a good benefit, not just ticket duplication in this case, it's really for completeness of investigation and completeness of reporting. Because if we pull those reports on a daily, weekly, whatever basis in ServiceNow, that has really excellent deep reports, by the way, um, it wouldn't include information about that incident if there was no bidirectional updates
Yeah.
available, right? So that's just one scenario. I'm sure there's lots and lots of them out there, but it's a really good thing to have. And if you have that available, enable it.
Yeah.
Take some time and enable that. It's a very positive thing.
It is. The next update that we're going to talk about is the general availability of lower capacity reservations tier for Azure Monitor dedicated clusters. So this is pretty good because so far they have lowered the minimum capacity. So right now was 500. It used to be
It
one
used to be a
a
thousand gigs
thousand
per day.
gigs. per day, and now they update this to half, which
Exactly.
will do is it will save you costs
Exactly.
because now you need less volume of injection, because this is always one of the problems, right? To be able to have Azure Monitor dedicated clusters, if the thing is, if you are using before this, because this is now GA, if you are using less than 1,000 gigs, the injection per day, you are still in
Yeah.
paying for 1,000 gigs. So
Exactly.
now you have a different tier, a lower tier that is 500 gigs. It's half. So if you are on those 500 gigs or even less than that, because the thing is, a lot of those organizations, I had a customer that they want to use this, but they were only on 150, 200. The top peak that they had was about 300 gigs. So they were still paying for 1,000 gigs, right?
Yeah.
Right now, they can save a ton of money, right? Because now the lower tier it's 500 gigs. So even if you're going on that tier, or if you want to go up on another tier, now you can save money because you are not paying for that huge injection, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it allows the dollar to stretch a little bit further, which
Yes.
means you can use other resources or repurpose that budget, of course. So I do like in the update that they exactly call out why there is a fixed cost required
Yeah.
for the dedicated cluster, and it really comes down to that back end of the Azure Data Explorer cluster.
Yeah.
That almost came out as one word. Sorry about that. ADX. But the reason that there's a fixed cost is because Azure Data Explorer is an expensive cluster resource to have. It's high powered and it's meant for a lot of data and a lot of analytics and usage.
Yeah.
So that's why it's pricey. So yeah, there's always a reason for everything. And I really like the increased transparency and honesty from Microsoft on this, because it really does help to take this back to our CIO or our IT leaders and help explain why a resource costs what it does, and that we have options. We can reduce the cost, we can do something a little differently, but it just helps with that understanding, and I think it goes a really long ways.
Absolutely. And this cost right now with this lower tier, you can save up to 30%
Mhm.
of your dedicated clusters, Azure Monitor dedicated clusters. So it's a pretty good savings if you are not going on that direction, right? Which can allows you to do other things with that cost savings money that you are doing. The next one is still on Azure Monitor, but it's a public preview of the Azure Monitor schedule query rules API of 2021 February 1st preview. So we mentioned this a few episodes back,
Mhm.
quite a few episodes back
I'm guessing
in
in February.
February. Yeah, absolutely. That they are in this case retiring this preview. Okay, so this preview is being retired. Uh, Now this preview it will retire. Okay, sorry for the confusion. The version of May 1st of 2020. So that was the preview, the schedule query that they add this. So this is a new APIs that you have that will be retired on October 31st of 2021. So they are always updating this, all these APIs, so you can schedule your query rules, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a really good update because it's tough to, I think, to republish these APIs because it impacts a lot of downstream connections.
Yes.
Well, really anything connecting to the APIs is impacted, right? So that's, I think, why they do this in a bit of a slower cadence, and it just takes a bit of time to do
Yeah.
that. So they're really telling us that the release from May 2020 is going to retire in the end
October
of October of
of
this year in
yeah,
2021.
yeah,
Yeah, so plan for it. If you're using the older API from May 2020, this is the heads up. Get
yeah,
ready, start now,
yeah.
and get planning, understand the new API from February 2021, and update any connections
Yeah.
and apps and things like that that are connecting to
Especially if
that
you have
API.
templates, right?
Right.
If
So
you
if you're
have
using ARM
templates,
templates and other
exactly.
things that you're using to deploy Terraform, Kubernetes, things that are connecting in here using automation of any flavor,
Yeah,
um, go and take a look.
exactly. Update those. You have
Because come
until
end of
October.
come Halloween, you're going
Yes,
to be going through the kids' candy, and you're going to get a call that something is not working, and you won't be able to eat the kids' candy. It's going to be terrible.
absolutely. And you are not able to just prank the kids as well because you will not be able to answer the door.
Exactly. Oh,
Oh,
I have excellent dreams of my Halloween coming up. I've thought of a way to string just some steel cable through the neighborhood and have a couple of ghosts attached to it so that they come down and fly. And I'm going to use some infrared sensors on Arduinos actually to trigger it so that it speeds up and makes a screaming noise as the ghost comes flying at you.
nice.
Trick or treat.
Wow, that's a different level of trick or treat. As well as the another update, the general availability of the Azure Managed AHM private link. So this
Mhm.
is a very cool one because we've been talking a lot about the AHM. That is the hardware security module service
That's correct.
that basically now you have a private link. So this means that that service is no longer available, not no longer available. You have the possibility of not being a public service, but be only internally using the private link for the Azure Managed ASM, which is an increase of security on another level, right? Because with private connectivity, you have a private IP, so it's going to be routable within only your network, within your Azure network, or even on premise. But it's going to be like you are on your data center. You don't need to come to outside. So you can even block that from the outside not to do it, and you can have firewalls to control that inside of your network, which is pretty good because now you can leverage your express route, for example, you can leverage your VPN connections and all of that you have available within your Azure. Did you want to see if you still have the ASM connected?
I was checking to see if my private endpoint was still
Ah,
working,
okay.
but it appears we are okay. It was just the neighbor's chickens going crazy, so I apologize for some background noise there.
I didn't listen to anything to be very honest, but yeah. Uh,
Well, noise canceling wins again. I could hear it through my headphones, which I have the noise canceling as well, and I thought, oh boy, Marcos is going to
no,
have to just hold the fort down for a moment while I go get the window here.
that's
So,
okay. That's okay.
but that's okay. Yeah. So this is really a great improvement again, right? Because the Azure Private Link, again, really good layer of adding security so that we can use, for example, database communication through that private endpoint versus having to go out across any other possibly open networks, right?
Mhm.
So we're able to use a little bit more security. We don't have to, in this case, use any gateways or NAT devices. And it also helps eliminate the need for ExpressRoute or VPN, and it keeps it off of public IPs. I want to say that that's been a hot topic for me lately with a number of clients, is talking about accessing resources with and without public IPs. And how do we accommodate things like that? Private endpoint is quite often a very good solution to help us achieve better security in that case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not say better than that. Thank you for that. Moving to the next one is the one of our favorites. We have to say we like this type of updates because they are still in development, so they are not available at least for everyone, or at least as a private preview or public preview. They are still developed, but this one is really key.
Mm-hmm.
The integration with Azure AD with Azure Automation is coming very soon. So
Woohoo! That's a
finally,
big one.
finally, we've been talking about this a lot of those times, especially
Yeah.
for the geeks like you and me that we love automate. Now be able to get Azure AD support, no, meaning that we can have raw RBAC, we can have all of those type of things, not be able to create any more those service accounts,
We don't
uh,
need those
those
certificates
certificates and
to
service
manage
accounts
accounts.
that
I have to say, not my favorite thing to work with. It's I feel I don't want to speak ill in this case, right? But I just want to say it's not a lot of fun, and it could be fun. So I think this is going to really help turn that around. I just am so excited about this one coming out. This
absolutely
is a really good one. So I associate this back to when when you're kind of a little more junior in system administration, and you realize, really, I can use VB script, batch files, and PowerShell to interact with Active Directory and help me provision accounts. It's like the same thing. We're realizing now, hey, we can do this with Azure Automation and Azure Active Directory. This is going to be a very impactful preview when it makes it out of development. Super exciting. Yeah, really.
absolutely
Uh, it's going to enable a lot more automation, and it's going to make, I think, a lot of administrators less stressed.
absolutely but it's not on the only thing. So
There's more.
there's more. Azure Automation in development with PowerShell support is coming soon as well. So it's like it's the we leave the Azure Automation part of it for last because not on purpose, we have to say, because we are
It's just
following
the way
the
that the week
chronological
went.
order. But it's good to see that Azure Automation is getting a lot of those. Although all of this is in development, so they are saying that the PowerShell 7.1 that is in development, or no, not in development, that is available because we already mentioned
Mhm.
here at the show.
Yeah,
It's coming to Azure Automation, which is good
perfect.
because sometimes, right, be able to have all of those scripts that you already update with and leveraging all the good things that PowerShell 7 allows you to do it, and going to the Azure Automation and not be able to do that, it's always a tricky part.
Exactly.
And right now be
Yes.
able to have all across the board, like on Cloud Shell, because on Cloud Shell you already have PowerShell 7, right? You
Mhm.
already have PowerShell 7 on your device to manage, but then you don't have that on Azure Automation. So it's tricky to develop something on Azure Automation that you need to be doing backward compatibility because you are not on the same version you're running on either your Windows or even on testing on your Cloud Shell. So it's pretty
That's
cool.
correct. Yep, this is a really good one. I usually have to develop my PowerShell for kind of N-2 just for compatibility,
Yeah,
which sometimes can be tricky because if you get excited and you install the latest and greatest on your production machine that you work day to day on to develop that code, you can end up getting caught once or twice. And I'm speaking from experience because you think to yourself, I will write this for Azure Automation. Then you test it in Azure Automation, and it says, what function are you talking about? Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating, but this is going to go a really long way. This is the fastest update cadence that I've seen
yeah,
with PowerShell releases into CLI and now into Azure Automation. I definitely am using it in Cloud Shell. I have been. As you know, I have, let's say, significant amount of library code for PowerShell,
yeah.
and I really enjoy it. But this is gonna be really cool. Yeah.
It
So
is.
this goes hand in hand with the Azure Active Directory integration
Yeah,
for Azure Automation. Imagine the things we can do.
yeah. Now imagine this one: availability zones
What?
support for Azure Automation is also coming soon. So it's in
You're
development.
telling me that my code can be cutting edge, fully Azure AD integrated, and highly available?
Yes, and it's
Amazing.
it's like it knows that even if you want, for example, doing a lot of those type of things like deploying resources, deploying that they will understand what is availability zones, okay, and they will able to do it that across availability zones to enable on regions. So because not all the zone right now at this present moment, not all the regions have the same amount of availability zones. Microsoft
Yeah.
already announced that was in 2025, if I'm not mistaken, that they will have all the regions in Azure with at least three availability zones, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Every month we see more added for
more
sure.
added. And now we're starting to
Mhm.
see this coming along as well. Because now the Azure automation is going to be aware of if that region have availability zones, how many availability zones you have, because this is going to be crucial if you want to do it, for example, a deployment, if you want to do it, some kind of disaster recovery, automation, some kind of that, to be able to be aware of that resilience, of that high availability that you are, higher reliability that you have on Azure. Bringing that to Azure automation is really critical, in my opinion, because it makes Azure automation way more powerful. So look at this. On the last three, right, we had an integration that was so needed that is with Azure AD, okay,
Mhm.
on Azure automation. We had the PowerShell 7. So now we will be fully compliant with the last version
7.1.
of PowerShell. I availability. The only thing that it was missing, right? It was the version of the AZ module on Azure Automation, because this bite me a lot of times. I have to say a lot of
Yeah,
times.
right.
So the
I know
the
you
AZ
use it, you
module
test it in
support
CLI,
on
and
Azure
then you go
Automation
over to your run book
is coming. Yeah,
and yeah.
it's
Oh
like
my
it's
gosh.
like. Are you kidding me? So I cannot use, like, for example, get dash az VM. I need to use the get dash Azure RM VM, something like that, to be able to do that. And you don't have
Yeah.
exactly the same. You don't have exactly the same switches. It was killing me. I developed another day a code that is working, and that's the part that you tested on Azure CLI. You tested on Cloud Shell. You tested on your develop. You're testing on Visual Studio, right? Code.
Yep.
Everything runs smoothly. You going and you
Yep.
transport that code to Azure
Until
Automation.
you put it in your run book,
Yeah,
and then
crash everything.
what module are you talking about,
Exactly.
right? I know, and this is why I talk about the complexity of developing for runbooks and Azure Automate or automation, because um, when when I do my development, I do always current -2, just to make sure I'm compatible with all of the platforms. Now, the problem that we run into, and I think you've hit this challenge as well, is Azure RM has stopped working in CLI for me,
Yeah,
right? So in one, you have one version, but they've deprecated the previous one. And in another product, they have one version, but it's not deprecated for that. And then for your desktop, it's bad practice to use the old version because they've patched and things like that. So now you have to use the current version. And this is where we run into this kind of a disconnect where it can be a challenge. But this is why you have to be very careful with that development and test. And when you think it's working, have somebody else test it too. Because there's nothing like a developer testing their own code and then it goes into production and you get the famous line, well, it worked when I tested it on my
exactly,
computer.
exactly, absolutely.
Right? So
But
frustrating.
this in this case, this update, you have another underlying update as well, and I apologize for our listeners at the podcast audio. In this case, because you cannot see this, I highly recommend you to go to either to the blog or to going to the in this case to the YouTube channel to see it, because it stays over there in blue, say that Azure RM Powershell model will retire in February, in the 29th of February 2004 to 24. So this means that all of the run books that we've been developing and we develop in this case that will be developed and developed already with Azure RM, they need to be updated by that date. So
That's
it's
correct.
really important that they are announcing this while they are still in development regarding this update, so we can make sure that everyone understands what we are doing and what needs to be done until then. So we have about 2 years and a half, let's go this way, um, to just update those, so we are not having issues with our runbooks, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is really important to take that to heart now instead of waiting because while it's fresh in our mind, just write it down, add it to your to do list in Planner, whatever you're using. Just make sure that you do update your runbooks that are using Azure RM module.
Absolutely,
Very, very important
absolutely,
because we'll forget about it. Maybe we get busy and we miss the reminder that comes up a year before it ends, and then it's a bit tricky that way.
absolutely.
But this has been a really great week of updates.
Yeah,
So many really good kind of monitor security and Azure automation updates. A very, very great week.
absolutely. And you just spot on. With that, we come to the end of our episode this week. Yes, the scenario is different. We thank you for that. Don't forget to subscribe. It's what we want you to do. It to just spread the love with all of us, and tell us what you like, you didn't like. Tell us if you like this new scenario. Tell us if you want, in this case, Mr. Andrew to move this scenario or both of us. We are open to those days. But don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button.
Absolutely. And please leave a comment. Let us know what you think. weigh in on some of the product retirements that have been announced well in advance
Yeah,
this week. What do you think about that? Is it too far out? Is it, perfect timing? Gives us a chance to go in and make the changes we need and plan those projects ahead of time. Yeah, let us know what you think.
absolutely. So thank you once more time, Andrew, for being here for another episode number 40, I have to say.
Oh my gosh, I forgot it was. We have 10 more. I'll have to remember for the
Yes,
episode 50. We'll
I
have
will.
to
I
wear a
will.
special hat or something.
Exactly. Special kind of dress code, something like that. Absolutely. So thank you once more time, and thank you for watching and for your support. I hope I see you next week. Bye for now.